Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Pearly. I believe a lot of you guys, myself included, one of our main goals when it comes to language learning is to eventually being able to chat with others, to have a conversation with others, right? However, a lot of times after hours and hours of learning and studying this language, we might still find ourselves struggled a lot when it comes to actually talking to people. You know, this feeling of when a native speaker finally shows up in front of you and it's finally your chance to have a conversation with them in their language, only then you realize you don't even quite understand what they're saying, not to mention actually forming sentences and finding words to express yourself. Except maybe, my name is Pearly and I'm from Taiwan. And that's all. That's the end of the conversation. You are definitely not alone in this kind of situations because I experience it quite often myself, especially when it comes to Spanish and Arabic. After this video, you will have a much better idea on how to solve this problem. I'll first share with you step by step on what practices and resources to use to prepare yourself for the conversation. Let's get right in. I feel like, wait, it became a bit dark. Let me turn on the light. Okay. To have a conversation with others, you will need to first, of course, understand what others are saying, right? And it's not always easy because native speakers usually speak quite fast and they can mix some slangs or expressions that you have never learned from your books before. So I would highly recommend to expose yourself to English podcasts, videos, series, or medias as early as possible. For me personally, I love podcasts the most because I can just use it as a background audio and listen whenever my ears are free. I would say pick those that you can understand at least 40 to 50%. Otherwise, it can be quite boring and not that helpful based on my personal experience. And the reason why we are doing this is to allow our brain to get used to how native speakers speak. You know, their speed, their tones, how they connect words and phrases, when do they pause, and just everything. You can go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Google to search for the English podcast that you like the most and also suits your level the most. So we just talked about passive practice. Now let's talk about two active practices that we can do. And the first practice is my favorite practice of all time, shadowing practice. To do shadowing practice, you try your best to shadow and mimic how a native speaker talks, from their pronunciation all the way to their gestures and facial expressions. The idea is by shadowing, you not only get better with your accent and pronunciation, you also get to learn new phrases and vocabulary. And I'll link the detail on how to do this practice here and also in the description box below. But I would say one thing, I find it super important when doing this practice to choose the video on the topic that interests you, even if you find they speak really fast and you consider it to be difficult, because I find it really difficult to stay motivated without a topic that interests me. And I find adjusting the speed of the video on YouTube a good solution, so you can also give that a try. Another practice that I highly recommend is to memorize some useful sentences and structures and adapt them to suit different kinds of situations. Here are 20 phrases that I recommend memorizing and learning. Most of them are related to travels because I find that most of the time when I meet someone that I can have an English conversation with is either I'm traveling, they are traveling, or both of us are traveling. So feel free to take a screenshot of it and adapt them for your own use. Learning these basic sentences is not only going to help you to start a conversation with someone, but also teaches you basic grammar structures already without you even noticing it. For example, I love listening to music. You now know the correct order is subject plus verb plus noun, and you can always adapt it to suit different kinds of situations. For example, I love climbing mountains. So always try to learn the phrases first, whether it's from shadowing practice, an article you read, or a podcast episode you listened to, and check the grammar points up when you are not sure about them. So instead of learning the grammar first and the phrases later, I hope it makes sense. I highly recommend English Grammar in Use as a reference book for looking up grammar grammar points. It's the only grammar book you need in my opinion because it's very comprehensive. For example, if you saw a sentence that said, I have done yoga for 5 years, and you are not sure why it uses I have done instead of that say I did, then you can first check the catalog of this book, find the unit accordingly, and look it up. And if you think that you'd like to have some exercises on that grammar point, there's always one below. I love how it not only provides clear explanations and example sentences, but also how it is so well organized and so colorful. Personally, I never think it's a good idea to study grammar and memorize the rules. I think it's way more effective to learn the phrases first and have a comprehensive grammar book on the side to check grammar points when needed. English Grammar in Use, published by Cambridge University Press and Assessment, is the world's best-selling grammar book for 40 years now, so I couldn't recommend it to you more. You can pick up your copy of the book using the link in the description box below. Okay, now let's talk about some life-saving tips you can use when you encounter some emergency situations during your chat with others, okay? And these emergency situations include, first of all, you just have no idea what this person is saying. And second of all, you start to feel a bit awkward because you couldn't say much since you are still lacking vocabulary to express yourself. So I have a few tips here to share with you. First, when you don't understand what this person is saying, of course, you can always ask them to repeat, but we all know that it's kind of annoying if you keep asking others to repeat. So in this moment, calm down, don't panic. The conversation is not going to die, okay? Just try your best to listen and to focus on any vocabulary you recognize. Don't try to understand the full sentence. Second, try to observe and read others' emotions. I know it might sound weird, but conversation doesn't only consist of words. It also includes people's emotions, tones, gestures, and etc. So we need to combine them as a whole picture. So what I always do is I try my best to gather as much as information and context as possible besides the words, put the puzzle together, try my best to guess what they are talking about, and respond accordingly. And of course, it's not uncommon that I responded with something unrelated, but it's okay. At least the conversation keep going and then people will respond. And sometimes we even become closer because my response was so unrelated and funny, it made us all laugh. Lastly, learn some reaction phrases so that you can use even if you don't fully understand what others are saying. Here are 7 phrases that I love using all the time. That's so cool. Wow. Perfect. Interesting. Yeah, exactly. I see. That's right. Okay, lastly, I'll briefly talk about what practices or reviews you can do after the conversation you had with someone. So one thing you can try doing is during your conversation with others, try to audio record the conversations. Of course, only for personal learning use. And after your conversation, re-listen to the chat you had with others, look up any words you don't know, and also check your own accent and pronunciation. Another thing I recommend doing is to write down or just note down any words or phrases that you wanted to say during the conversation but didn't get to because you don't know how. So next time you know how to say them. That's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you like it and find it helpful. Don't forget that you can pick up your copy of English Grammar in Use using the link in the description box below. That's all for today. Thank you so much again, and let me know if you have any further questions in the comment area. I would be very happy to help. And that's it for today. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you and see you very soon in the next video. Bye! Bye-bye! I feel like, wait, it became a bit dark. Let me turn on the light. Okay, much better. So